Have you ever stumbled across words that felt like they were meant for you? Not something you found in a movie, not even a line from a song, but something written down, raw and unpolished, that somehow hits you straight in the chest. That's exactly what happened with Johnny Depp. He wrote a letter that people have described as unforgettable. A letter that doesn't sound like it came from one of Hollywood's biggest stars, but from a man who had been battered, bruised, and humbled by life. And the line that starts it off, the one that makes you pause, is simple. I never thought I'd be sitting here. When you hear that, you can almost picture him sitting at a desk, maybe late at night, cigarette smoke curling in the air, ink smudged on his hand, and those words spilling out onto the page. Because think about it. How many times have you said something like that to yourself? I never thought I'd be here. Whether it's good, bad, or somewhere in between, life has a way of surprising us. And for Johnny Depp, that surprise came with more twists and turns than most of us could handle. Johnny Depp isn't just a celebrity. He's a figure who has lived in the imagination of millions. He's been Jack Sparrow, stumbling and swaggering across ships. He's been Edward Scissorhands, tender and strange. He's been Willy Wonka, quirky and unsettling. These are characters that live forever in pop culture. But when he sat down to write this letter, there were no costumes, no makeup, no script. It was just him, and for once he wasn't playing a role. He was telling the truth. In the letter, he admits something you rarely hear from stars. He lost himself. And not in the fun way people say when they get caught up in a song or a book. He lost himself in the kind of way that makes you look in the mirror and wonder who's staring back. He writes about waking up some days and not recognizing the man looking back at him. That hits hard, doesn't it? Because even if you've never been on a movie set or walked a red carpet, you probably know that feeling. That moment when you've made so many compromises, so many mistakes, or carried so many burdens that you don't feel like you anymore. It's the kind of honesty that makes you sit up and pay attention. Because celebrities rarely talk like this. They usually show us the polished version, the version that smiles at premieres, the version that wins awards, the version that looks untouchable. But Depp's letter breaks through all of that. He admits that behind the roles, behind the flashing cameras, there was a man who felt broken. And that's what makes the letter so unforgettable. But then, just when you think it's going to be all darkness, he shifts. He doesn't drown in bitterness. He doesn't lash out at enemies. Instead, he talks about gratitude. He thanks his kids, Lily, Rose, and Jack. He thanks the handful of friends who stayed when everything was collapsing. And he thanks his fans. That part is especially striking. Because let's be real, celebrities often say thank you to the fans, but here it felt different. It wasn't a line for applause. It was almost like he was whispering, "You saved me." He admits that without them, without their belief, their loyalty, their refusal to walk away when headlines were screaming otherwise, he might not have made it through. Imagine that for a second. A man who has built a career worth hundreds of millions of dollars, who has seen his face on billboards across the world, admitting that what truly kept him going were the letters, the support, the quiet encouragement of ordinary people. That makes you think, doesn't it? Because it reminds us that no matter how famous or wealthy someone gets, at the end of the day, they still need someone to believe in them. Just like we all do, and then comes another turn in the letter. He talks about forgiveness. Not forgiveness of others first, but forgiveness of himself. He admits to mistakes. He admits to letting anger take the wheel sometimes. He admits to decisions he regrets, and you can feel the weight of those words. Because it takes courage to admit when you've been wrong, especially in front of the whole world. How many times have you looked back and thought, if only I had done things differently? That's the exact feeling Depp puts into words, but instead of living in regret, he makes a choice. He chooses to forgive himself, to stop carrying the burden of every mistake like a chain. And in that moment, his letter becomes less about Johnny Depp and more about something we can all learn from. Because isn't that one of the hardest things to do? To look at ourselves not with anger, but with compassion? To forgive ourselves for the times we messed up? Now here's something most people don't know. Insiders have said this letter wasn't written for publicity. It wasn't a press release. It was something Depp wanted his children to read one day. Think about that. This wasn't about repairing an image. It was about leaving behind something honest for the people he loves most. Almost like a time capsule of lessons learned. And imagine being his kids one day reading those words. It's one thing to see your dad as a movie star. It's another to see him as a man trying to make peace with his own story. That's powerful. Experts say letters like this mark a turning point. They're not about reputation anymore. They're about legacy. Depp is saying, "Here I am, flaws and all. Judge me if you want. But this is me." And that's rare. Because most celebrities spend their lives hiding the cracks. Depp chooses to show them. And maybe that's the bravest thing he's ever done. Here's a small but fascinating detail, too. Johnny Depp has always been a writer at heart. On film sets, in trailers, even in hotel rooms, he's been known to scribble in journals, jotting down thoughts, sketches, lyrics. But those pages stayed private. This letter, though, was different. This time he shared it with the world. And that shift, that decision to let people in, makes it one of the most human things he's ever done. Reading through it, you notice something else. It's not written like a polished essay. It's uneven, messy at times, almost like it was pouring straight from his heart without edits. And maybe that's why it feels so real. Because life isn't polished. Pain isn't scripted. And in this letter, he doesn't pretend otherwise. There's a moment where Johnny Depp reflects on what really matters. And it's not the movies. It's not the flashing cameras, the screaming crowds, or the heavy golden trophies lined up on a shelf. He writes about something far simpler, far more human. He talks about the people who stay when everything else crumbles. The people who are there when the curtain falls, when the lights go out, when the glamour disappears. And when you think about it, doesn't that ring true for all of us? Because when life gets tough, and I mean really tough, it's never the flashy things that save us. It's not the expensive car in the driveway or the big job title on a business card. It's the phone call from someone who cares enough to check in. It's the knock on the door when you've been sitting alone too long. It's the quiet reminder from someone close that you're not fighting your battles by yourself. And Depp's letter reminds us that even in his world of fame and fortune, where he seemed to have everything, it really all comes down to the same thing: love, loyalty, and connection. Think about it for a moment. Imagine the contrast. Here's a man who has lived most of his life on the biggest stages in the world. He's been adored by millions, followed by paparazzi everywhere he goes, surrounded by the kind of luxury and attention most people will never experience. And yet, when everything went wrong, when headlines turned cruel, when friendships collapsed, when doors closed, it wasn't the money or the movies that gave him strength. It was the handful of people who stayed. Isn't it strange how in life you can fill a room with acquaintances, business partners, casual friends, but when the storm hits, the room suddenly feels empty? That's when you notice who's still sitting beside you. Those are the people who matter. The ones who show up without needing to be asked. The ones who stay not because of what you have, but because of who you are. And Depp's letter, in its quiet honesty, reminds us that he learned this lesson the hard way. And let's be real. Don't we all learn it the hard way? How many times have you gone through something, maybe heartbreak, maybe financial struggle, maybe illness, and noticed how quickly some people vanish? They stop calling, stop checking in, stop making time. But then, on the flip side, there are those few, sometimes only one or two, who never leave. They sit with you in the silence. They pick up the phone even when you don't know what to say. They make sure you don't drown in your own loneliness. And when you come out the other side, you realize that those people are worth more than any job, any possession, any applause. For Depp, that meant his kids. Lily Rose and Jack. In the middle of chaos, they were the constant reminder that his life wasn't defined by the noise outside, but by the quiet love inside. And if you're a parent, you know what that feels like. Children don't care about your net worth or your reputation in magazines. They care about your presence, your love, your ability to show up for them. And that grounded him in a way no blockbuster ever could. It also meant the friends who didn't abandon him. The ones who didn't believe every headline, who didn't trade loyalty for gossip. And let's be honest, that's rare, especially in Hollywood. But here's the thing, that's rare everywhere. Loyalty is not common. Genuine connection is not common. And that's why when we find it, it's priceless. And it meant the fans. Millions of them who continued to write letters, hold up signs, send messages, and remind him that no matter what the world was saying, there were people who still believed in him. Imagine that for a second. Being broken down by the world's judgment, and then opening a letter from a stranger who says, "You've inspired me. Don't give up." Do you know how powerful that is? It shows us that even the smallest act of loyalty can ripple into someone's life and save them. But here's the deeper truth that Johnny Depp's reflection uncovers. It's that we spend so much of our lives chasing things that won't hold us when we fall. Think about it. We chase money, status, likes on social media, the approval of people who might not even know us well. We fill our calendars, we buy the latest gadgets, we run after the next big achievement. But when the ground collapses, none of those things reach out to pull us up. They can't. Only people can. Only love can. Only connection can. It's almost ironic, because so much of our energy goes into impressing people who might not even be around when we need them. And the people who will be there, our family, our truest friends, are often the ones we take for granted. We assume they'll always be there, so we pour our energy into the flashy parts of life instead. But the truth, as Depp's letter shows us, is that when everything else breaks down, the only thing that holds us together is the loyalty of those who never left. And doesn't that make you think about your own life? Who are the people who would stay if everything crumbled tomorrow? Who would knock on your door without you asking? Who would answer your call at 2 a.m. even if you had nothing left to give back? Those are the ones who matter. And sometimes that number is smaller than we'd like to admit. Depp's reflection also reminds us of something we often forget. Connection is built in the small, ordinary moments, not the big gestures. It's built in shared meals, in quiet talks, in inside jokes, in listening when someone is hurting. It's not about the show. It's about the substance. And maybe that's why he emphasizes it so much in his letter. Because when you strip away the showbiz, the awards, the headlines, what's left are the relationships you've nurtured, or the ones you've neglected. And maybe that's the bittersweet truth of his words. That for a long time he might have been distracted by the noise. But when the noise faded, what saved him were the voices that still whispered, "We're here." And I wonder, how many of us are chasing the wrong things right now? How many of us are filling our days with tasks, goals, possessions, but forgetting to build the kind of connections that actually keep us alive? Because one day, each of us will face our own storm. And when that day comes, we'll learn, just like Depp did, that the things we thought mattered often don't. And the things we overlooked? They're everything. This is why his words linger. Because they don't just tell his story. They hold up a mirror to ours. They make us pause and ask, who do I have? Who can I count on? And maybe even more importantly, who can count on me? Because love, loyalty, and connection aren't just about receiving. They're about giving. They're about being the one who picks up the phone, who knocks on the door, who stays when things get ugly. They're about choosing to be the anchor for someone else, just as much as they're about finding one for ourselves. And isn't that what makes life truly meaningful? Not the applause, not the spotlight, but the relationships that hold steady even in the darkest nights. That's what Depp's letter captures. That's why people describe it as unforgettable. Because even though it came from someone living in a world most of us can't imagine, it speaks to something all of us understand. The need for love, the value of loyalty, the power of connection, and maybe that's the real takeaway. That the greatest wealth we'll ever have isn't money, isn't status, isn't fame. It's the people who refuse to leave when everything else does. And as you keep reading, you realize that the letter isn't just about surviving scandal or controversy. It's about something deeper. It's about finding a way back to yourself after being lost. It's about realizing that mistakes don't have to define you. It's about learning to see yourself as worthy again. Maybe that's why it resonates with so many people. Because haven't we all felt lost at some point? Haven't we all had moments where we thought we couldn't keep going? And yet, like Depp, we find strength in someone or something that pulls us through. For him, it was his kids, his fans, and a few true friends. For us, it might be different. But the lesson is the same. Don't give up. And there's something hauntingly beautiful in the way he frames it. He doesn't write like a man who has it all figured out. He writes like someone still searching, still piecing things together. And maybe that's the real message. That it's okay to still be figuring it out. That it's okay to admit you're a work in progress. By the time you finish the letter, you realize you're not just reading about a celebrity. You're reading about a human being, a father, a friend, a man who has stumbled, fallen, and gotten back up. And in that, you see yourself. Because at the end of the day, fame doesn't erase humanity. It just puts it under a brighter light. So when Depp says, "I never thought I'd be sitting here," it's not just about him. It's about all of us who've ever ended up in a place we didn't expect. Sometimes for better, sometimes for worse. It's about the journey we take to make peace with ourselves. And maybe that's why this letter will be remembered. Not because it came from Johnny Depp, the movie star, but because it came from Johnny Depp, the man. A man who had the courage to say what so many of us feel but rarely put into words. So here's the question for you. What do you think of Johnny Depp's letter? Do you see it as a genuine moment of honesty? Or just another move in the Hollywood game? Either way, one thing is clear. It's touched millions already. And it will keep touching people for years to come. And if this story made you reflect even for a moment, you might want to dive deeper into another moment from his life, one where silence spoke louder than any words. Johnny Depp's quietest moment. A moment that reminded the world that even in chaos, stillness can be powerful. Before you go, if you've connected with this story, don't forget to share your thoughts. Hit that like button and subscribe for more. Because here it's not just about gossip. It's about the human stories hidden behind the headlines. Stories that remind us we're all more alike than we realize. Because sometimes the most unforgettable words don't come from scripts or speeches. They come from letters that carry the truth. And Johnny Depp's letter, well, that's one you'll never forget.